delay, everyone. My system just crashed, and so I'm just logging back in now. A very community call with the special edition of honoring Black History Month with our speakers today. We'll go ahead and get started, and have a tight schedule, so I'll go ahead and launch us off with today's agenda. On the SEARAC team, at SEARAC, our field and operations team, as well as our executive director, Quinn. So I'll allow them to introduce themselves quickly as well.
Hey everyone, I'm Quinn. I'm the executive director of SEARAC. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm really excited to be here with y'all today.
Hi everyone, Gina here, SEARAC's field associate. I use she, her pronouns, calling in from Washington, D.C. I'm here to provide technical support. So if you have any issues, feel free to reach out to me or Phoebe directly. Thanks for being here, everyone.
Hi everyone, as Gina said, I'm here for technical support. I'm also calling in from Washington, D.C., and I use she, her, hers pronouns as well.
Much team. Black brothers and sisters and community, but for Southeast Asian Americans and our history, which is very tied to the communities that we share with one another. And so I'm excited to speak with and have discussion with Deja, Hattie, Nehemiah, and Ty as we go along with the celebrations. Gina, would you like to go over quick logistics?
Sure. So if you've been on any of our community calls before, this is pretty old hat. Everyone's going to be placed on mute just to limit any background noises. If you would like to comment or question or send remarks in the chat box, please feel free, but you will just need to be logged into Zoom to do that. So feel free to solicit questions, or excuse me, send questions through either the chat box or the Q&A function. And we will be having a formal Q&A session for our incredible guest speakers today towards the end of the session. So we'll be answering those then. And finally, here is the control panel board. So if you use that chat box or the Q&A, you can send your questions there and we'll try to answer them. And then there's the raise hand function if you'd like to share verbally during our Q&A session. And with that, I will pass it back to Sina.
Thanks so much, Gina. So for today, we're going to have a special welcome and remarks from our Executive Director, Quinn. And once we go through a little bit of history that I will share about Black and Southeast Asian shared struggle and partnerships and work that our communities have been doing together for a long time. We will go into a panel discussion with the panelists we have today, and then go into the Q&A and quick announcements. And Gina, if you can pull up our polls right before we go into Quinn's remarks. We would love to see who's joining with us today. Just to help with any lag on my end, I apologize. I'll go ahead and turn off my video. What we like to do with our community calls is see who's joining with us today, where you're calling from, and in what capacity you're joining us. So for our first poll question is, how many Southeast Asian Resource Action Center community calls have you participated with us before? All right. Gina, are you able to show the results of the poll? Unfortunately, on my end, there is still a little lag, so I apologize. I'm not able to show the results of that poll right now. The next poll question is, where are you joining us from today? I apologize again. It looks like moving through the poll questions, I am unable to connect directly to that page where I can view it. So I'll go ahead and just move us along so we can get to the most important part of this community call, which is speaking with our guest speakers and going into the celebration of Black History Month and racial solidarity from the Southeast Asian community and APIs. So if that's okay, I'll go ahead and see if Quinn is available to make remarks, if it's okay with our technical assistants behind the scene, to move on to Quinn, who's just coming back from a little bit of a leave. And we're so excited to have her join to welcome our speakers, as well as in celebration for Black History Month today.
Thank you so much, Sina, and thank you so much to our speakers and to all of you for joining us in the community today. As Sina shared, I've just come back from a sabbatical and family leave. I am a first-time mom of a 4-month-old named Kai, and in Vietnamese, Kai means victory. So it's very aligned to our celebrations today and the work that we have in building love and community across our country. So I wanted to thank folks again for joining us as we celebrate Black History Month and our Black allies by really demonstrating what solidarity in action looks like as we come together to learn, to grow, to inspire, and to conspire as we build power for our communities. In celebrating Black History Month, I want to honor the long legacy of Black solidarity that we as Southeast Asian Americans are direct beneficiaries of across so many different political ideologies that have allowed us to make America our home. Because when over 60% of the American public disapproved of increasing refugee resettlement in the 70s, it was the Black Panthers' 10-point program that opposed killing other people of color who were also victims of racism across Southeast Asia. It was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. who, in his Beyond Vietnam speech, demanded that the US provide asylum and aid to Southeast Asians because of our tide struggle. And because it was Black leaders who in 1978 placed an ad in the New York Times titled "Black Americans Urge Admissions of the Indo-Chinese Refugees because our struggle for freedom is tied to theirs." Because it's this solidarity that has now contributed to us being able to call ourselves not just Southeast Asian, but Southeast Asian American. So in honor of Black History Month, we uplift this long legacy of solidarity, a story that is not included in our textbooks, a story that is often not taught even in the most liberal of colleges and universities, but a story that belongs to us, a story that empowers us as Southeast Asian Americans to continue this legacy every day by fighting for justice, by fighting for equity for all communities. And today we're so honored to hear from fierce leaders from across our country, from Undocumented Black to CF Village to Arise, who live this legacy of solidarity every day. We want to thank our speakers for sharing with us their wisdom and their community's wisdom as we at SEARAC uphold our responsibility as inheritors of solidarity to better refine and to expand our solidarity strategy, to never forget our responsibility to those who fought for us before an us even existed. And today, in a world and political climate that is more divided than ever, we look to this history of solidarity to remind us of our shared liberation, to inspire us to write the new chapter of solidarity as we collectively fight to define better and brighter futures for our communities for generations to come. Thank you all so much. I am so excited to listen in on this dialogue and to be in community with you all.
Thank you so much, Gwen. Such great words and history you've already went into for us and the reasons why we're here today. And so without further ado, I'll go ahead and get us into a little bit of history so we can chat with our speakers who will discuss more about the solidarity work we can do with one another to better both of our communities and all of our communities that we care so much about. So on the topic of racial solidarity in action and celebration of our Black allies, SEARAC wanted to host this special edition Black History Month community call so we can just really bring to the forefront some of the history of our communities working together as well as supporting one another, because we know that it is so needed right now in this moment in history with all that is going on in the world. I just wanted to share for Black History Month, it did start almost 100 years ago, where in 1926, there was efforts really from the Black community of activists, organizers, those who had been pushing for citizenship rights and desegregating and against racist policies and violence. And so this is a long history of the Black community actually fighting to be a part of American history as benefactors, as contributors, as American citizens, and gaining those rights with uplifting everybody else along the way, from the civil rights movements in the 1950s and 60s to an established Black History Month in 1970, coming from the civil rights movements. And so this is a long history in actually creating a month where we can learn about, learn from, and celebrate those of African diaspora. Something really important to know is that Southeast Asian Americans arrived here as refugees primarily in the 1970s, mid-1970s, due to conflict in Southeast Asia. And one of the groups coming from the civil rights movement helped to not only advocate for intersectional solidarity. Those leaders were Black Americans, African Americans. During the Civil Rights Movement, predominantly queer, trans, and Black feminist theorists who had coined intersectional advocacy and rights, leading to many of the rights and the civil rights we enjoy today. And, from different types of policies that has targeted and really impacted all of our communities of color and marginal communities as well in US history, particularly most recently in terms of immigrant rights. The Black immigrant community has been advocating for this issue for a very long time as well, and impacted by it. So we know that Southeast Asian Americans are disproportionately impacted by deportations, which for the Cambodian American community started in 2002. And for Black immigrant communities, I will have one of our speakers, Hattie, go into a little more of the history there. But I just wanted to uplift that our communities since the resettlement of Southeast Asian Americans and refugees, we've been in struggle and working with one another, with other immigrant communities and with the Black community who have a long history of fighting for civil rights and joining this when both of our communities have been under attack with mass detentions and deportations. And just quickly, a lesson from history, which is something on our SEARAC Solidarity for Black Lives Matter resource hub as well, is a New York Times ad where those who were advocating for anti-war, the admission, acceptance, and relief for Southeast Asian Americans who were undergoing conflict and displacement from the Vietnam War, from the bombings and a war in Laos, from the genocide and civil wars in Cambodia, were Black American leaders, often from the civil rights movement. And so it was many of the intersectional struggle and advocacy coming from the Black community that really welcomed Southeast Asians and allowed for many of the policies and support to resettle us in the US. And so going into the celebration of this long history of the Black community fighting for civil rights, and in turn, really benefiting not only the Southeast Asian community, but many other communities who faced marginalization and were left out of rights and protections. I would love for us to go into a panel discussion. And we'll introduce to you our first speaker who can talk a little more about what's happening for the Black immigrant community and a current crisis that we can all show up and support in learning more about and helping their community in fighting back. For our first speaker, we have Hattie Gassama. She's a Undocu Black Network Policy and Advisory Coordinator. And Hattie, I just want to make sure we can hear you okay.
Sure, yeah.
Oh, okay. Excellent, great. Just to make sure we have time to go over many of these questions, would you mind as we delve into these questions, let us know a little bit of the background of Undocu Black and how you got started in the work?
Sure, I'm happy to. First of all, thank you so much for having me and for providing this space to have, such a wonderful discussion. So far, the presentation has been great, and I'm learning a lot just by your comments as well as Quinn's statement. So I'm really looking forward to an enriching conversation. I know we love SEARAC at UndocuBlack. A lot of the issues that we work on overlap, and I'm looking forward to doing more of that collaborative work. In terms of the history of UndocuBlack, it was actually established about 5 years ago. So we're a relatively young organization. And it started around the times of the uprisings that were going on in Baltimore after the horrific murder of Freddie Gray in a police van. And during that time, undocumented Black people were facing the angst of dealing with all of, the racial injustices that come with police brutality in this country, while also always having, their immigration status kind of looming over their head. So a couple of our people who would later become our co-founders kind of started getting together at each other's apartments and just kind of having regular community discussions, and one thing led to another, and they really started to organize and plan, and they were able to host the first convening of undocumented Black people in Miami. Several years later, here where we are, and UndocuBlack is a thriving multi-generational organization for formerly and currently undocumented Black folks. We do a number of different things. As Sina mentioned, I'm the policy and advocacy coordinator, so I focus largely on our legislative policy and advocacy work, but we also have an incredible communications and digital organizing team that really does a lot of great work around making sure the experience of Black immigrants is centered in mainstream media. And we also have a community wellness and mental health component where we host different seminars and training sessions to really empower and equip members of our community to facilitate discussions, be trauma informed, and continue doing this work just outside of the space of UndocuBlack. So I think I'll leave it there for that question.
Thank you so much, Hattie, for the just sharing the inception of your organization and where it came from. I know right now there is a current crisis, and we at SEARAC have been monitoring the situation just because we do share in deportation impact as well in our community disproportionately.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share a little bit more of deportations and why they are on the rise in the community, in the Black immigrant community?
Sure. And as you've mentioned, it's no secret that our communities as Black immigrants and as Asian immigrants have been disproportionately targeted when it comes to enforcement, and deportations are, one branch of that. In terms of what's going on recently, I would say since, I believe, January 28th up till today, there have been more than 70, probably 75 deportation flights that have left this country. Of those, 14 have been directly to Haiti. And then there were several others that were sent to other parts of the world, other Black majority countries. Just today, a trans woman was deported back to Guyana. The majority of the people who've been deported throughout Black History Month, almost every single day of Black History Month, except for the weekends, have been children, some babies as young as 1 month old, pregnant women, people with other forms of disabilities and vulnerabilities, being sent back to countries where there are political uprisings and civil unrest and instabilities. All of this happening during the middle of a global pandemic. It's, a blatantly racist, targeted attack on our communities. The way in which the government has been able to or has tried to explain some of these deportations is through what is called Title 42. And what that was an archaic sort of public health provision that the Trump administration brought back to life, and uses it as grounds to expel people from the United States due to what they consider public health reasons or fears, without giving them an opportunity to even apply for asylum. And so that's how the majority of the people who've been deported during Black History Month have, that's kind of what they fall under, are these Title 42 expulsions. But that aside, this is nothing new. That disproportionate amount of stays in detention facilities, the high rates of people from our countries being deported, visa bans against our countries. And when I say our countries, I mean both Black countries as well as Asian countries, is nothing new. It is deeply, deeply rooted in this system that came about for very xenophobic and racist purposes. And so, again, I'm thankful for having the opportunity to share this information. I'm thankful that you guys have been uplifting the messaging around asking for the stop of deportations. But yeah, that's kind of what's been going on in a nutshell. At UndocuBlack, it's really been just rapid response pretty much every single day of Black History Month. Yeah, it's really a shame.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing such thorough and detailed information. I appreciate that you're mentioning xenophobia, you're mentioning racism, and maybe even an extension, white supremacy that is really at the forefront of the anti-racist work right now in the country. And recognizing that when we're talking about xenophobia, it includes Black immigrants as well as other people of color too. Oftentimes I know there can be erasure in terms of who immigrants are considered, who that may look like. And so thank you, Hattie, for your work, as well as sharing the crisis that's happening right now in your community. I definitely will come back to you in terms of how we can help and what we can do with next steps, and enrich this discussion with presenting our next speaker. Thank you, Hattie. So I am proud to introduce everyone to Ty Little, who is a Black Southern organizer for Southeast Asian Coalition Village, SEARAC Village in Charlotte. She's also an organizer with Charlotte Uprising. And I'll have her, if she would like to, explain a little further about her work, as well as some of the recent actions that has come from her organizations needing support from all of us today to take some actions to address some arrests that came from an action that Charlotte Uprising and SEARAC Village were able to address in the last couple of months in targeted attacks to the immigrant and refugee community. So I will go ahead and let Ty, can you hear us okay, Ty? Make sure we can hear you as well.
Yes, I'm here.
Perfect, thank you. I'll go ahead and let you do any other introductions, but I had here some slides from ways that the action that happened from a couple months ago led to some arrests and for your organization. Can you share with us a little bit about what that action was and the work being done around it since the arrests has happened?
Yes, absolutely. So in Charlotte, I think what makes us unique compared to other places within the movement is that we are a collective. It's not just one grouping or another. We come together from all iterations of life. We have Black, Asian, trans, we have African diaspora, we have Caribbean diaspora, all just within our youth group, within our movement group, all of that. And so we like to ensure that we are uplifting all of our struggles, right? Because all of our liberations are tied together. If we are successful in our work and leave behind anybody that is wanting to be liberated, then none of us are liberated. We just shifted power. And so recently within our collective work, we did do an action where we protested against Tony Pham. Pham was a ICE director that was appointed by the Trump administration, who was a refugee from Vietnam. That bothered us, among other organizations as well. We were asked to come in for a call out, basically saying that um, um, Tony Pham being placed as the director of ICE is just another tool of white supremacy. Because just because you put a face that looks like ours in a position of power doesn't mean that you're serving our communities. And Pham was notorious for starting gang databases and things like that in Virginia that not only targeted the Black community, but that led to Lao and Vietnamese people being incarcerated at much higher rates. And because we know our liberation is tied together, we had to call that out. So we went to Washington, D.C. We showed up at ICE headquarters and asked him to come out so that we could deliver a statement to him saying that Pham is not our family. He's not one of us. And he refused to do so. So we allegedly showed up at his home and continued our protest there. As a result of that, 9 people, one from Philadelphia, from Viet Ly, Nancy, as well as 8 of our comrades here in Charlotte from a diverse background, including 2 trans individuals, including Black individuals, including Indigenous, including white, including Vietnamese, have all been arrested after the fact, and are facing charges for what is basically littering and trespassing. As a result of our direct action, Tony Pham quit his job. He left. And so we need to celebrate that, right? But as part of celebrating that, we need to make sure that these people's charges are dropped and that we're keeping each other safe, that we're liberating ourselves while we're trying to liberate one another, and we're protecting ourselves, right? Especially our trans folks that were on the front lines with us, because when they put themselves on the line, it could be life or death for them whenever they're incarcerated after the fact. So we need to make sure that that is not happening. And so we are collectively asking the community to stand up and to protect those 9 individuals that were arrested after that action.
Thank you so much, Ty, for just your advocacy work in the community, the solidarity and leadership that you show in terms of the organizations you work with, you know, spanning the Southeast Asian American community in North Carolina, as well as those trans, queer, Black, and other identified leaders who not only were fighting to protect you know, the attacks to immigrants and refugees, but also in terms of addressing systemic issues of mass detentions and incarceration in general that plagues our country. Can you share with us a little bit about what that racial solidarity looks like for you as a Black identified woman who's a leader in our movement and in our communities?
Yes, so not just in the movement community, but inside of my own home, you know, coming from a diverse background, as well as raising multi-ethnic, multicultural children, as my partner is a Southeast Asian who is also facing deportation to a country that they know nothing of. being in solidarity within the movement is something that is very important, because like I said, all of our liberation is tied together. You know, just like what Hattie was speaking about Title 42, public health reasons. Those are things that we see show up today in Charlotte. You know, we've been doing a lot for our houseless community, and they've been using something very similar to Title 42, where it's a public health crisis to be able to remove them. And this impacts multiple people from multiple places. And so for us to be able to come together and fight off what is really white supremacy in all of these different forms, we have to come together. We have to stand together and understand that our liberation is tied together, and we have to uplift one another when we're doing so. It's often that, you know, things happen and we're in rapid response, and it's easy to leave behind those that are there with us, but we have to make sure that we're uplifting those and we are taking care of one another throughout that. You know, our youth group is blended the way that it is because that's what our communities look like. You know, on the west side of Charlotte, it's a nice gathering of Asian, Southeast Asian, East Asian, white, Black, Caribbean, African, and as a result, our youth group looks that way. Our movement community looks that way, and we hold one another up. And we think that everyone should do the same within their movement spaces, because for us to be able to fight this battle together, we have to stand together. Colonialism has worked historically because they're able to pit us against one another. And if they can't pit us against one another, then they can't beat us. So why not stand together and fight together?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ty, for really getting to the heart of what racial solidarity looks like, because it is a reflection of what our communities look like. And thank you so much for uplifting that and really going back to what really brings us together today and for Black History Month and for every day of the year, not only in this movement, in this work, in our communities, but in our families, which are blended very much so. Thank you, Ty. I think with that note, I think it would be great for us to introduce our next speaker, Deja Priester, because as we're talking about blended families and racial solidarity, a lot of the movement that has been happening this last year under, you know, like duress of a pandemic, but also a lot of the uprisings that has been happening in support of the movement for Black lives. And that is often led by our youth leaders. So I would like to go ahead and introduce to everyone Deja Priester, who is a youth, a RISE organizer who's joining us today to talk a little bit more about what that looks like being a multiracial youth and a leader, a youth leader who is not only doing work on the ground, but working in her community, coming from a Southeast Asian background, as well as many other ethnic ethnicities that she shares as well. So Deja, if you're with us, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Excellent. Whoops, I think, my apologies. There we go. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I'll go ahead and want to let everyone know, not only are you multiracial youth organizer and leader, but you also are part of one of our partners in our education work. And so not only you're an amazing leader, but we would love to hear more and learn more about what your experience has been like when we're talking about racial solidarity. What does that look like from your experience? Can you share a little bit of sorry, I'm just on the wrong slide. My apologies. There we are. Deja, can you share a little bit more about what your upbringing was like?
Okay, so I was raised in my mom's side, and she's the one who's Khmer, and my dad's the one who's mixed with everything else. So even though I was always surrounded by Khmer culture, I always made sure that I was still immersed and connected to my Black side, specifically like the music I listened to, and when I was at my father's, and when I would see his family, the food, like just the culture in general. And even though I was going to like predominantly Asian events, specifically like the Khmer New Year, which is in April, I was literally always surrounded by people that had different features than me, specifically like my curly hair, my skin tone, my features on my face. And I never really felt like different, but I always felt like something, I was more unique per se than others, just from the main fact that everyone else was either lighter than me or everyone else had straight hair and everyone else was always just looking different than me besides the few mixed kids that were always there. And sometimes I did feel as though I wasn't Black enough or I wasn't Asian enough to be in these communities because they're totally different and they have different spectrums. They do totally different things, but especially when it comes to clothes or when it comes to just the music we listen to or the people we chill with. And being a student now, especially, and even just further on in life, I always had to be the person that would click the multiracial box. I would have to pick the option that would say mixed race because there was never truly an option that really could embrace who I actually was, especially because I'm mixed with so many different things. And being someone that's Black presenting and being someone that's part Asian, people never really believe that I'm Asian until like they see my mom or they see someone on my mom's side of the family because of all my different features. And even though when I was younger, I did wish that I had like the blonde hair, the blue eyes, the lighter skin, I like began to truly embrace who I actually was and got to really appreciate the different aspects of my different cultures and of what I experience and what I go through every single day. So that's something that's really impactful for me.
That makes sense. Thank you for sharing that, Deja. For our second question, because of, I'm sure, you know, like as a youth who's also multiracial, and you shared a little bit about what that experience is like. There probably has been struggles and some difficulties in really embracing all the different you know, components to your identity. What would you say really made you feel most supported or helped you to become the leader that you are and embracing your multiracial identity?
Honestly, it's a mix of a lot of different things, like specifically the Arise team or just Arise as an organization in general, my friends, myself, and just the people tell me that I did make mistakes and they're always there to try to help me improve myself. And it's not that they only care about like my schooling or they care about just Arise work in general. They always make sure like my mental health and everything that has to do with me is aligned and everything works perfectly. And they always make sure that I'm happy and they make me feel really loved, honestly. And when it comes to myself, since I'm someone that struggles with a lot of mental health issues, being able to be a part of Arise and being able to be a part of these different organizations and different movements has really made me improve myself, not just emotionally and mentally, but like just as a whole person in general. And Arise always tries to make sure that everyone is comfortable and that I'm comfortable and that they aren't afraid to even push us out of our comfort zone, which is something that I really appreciate because when I first entered high school, I was always scared to like make new friends or I was scared to talk to other people, and being a part of the Arise programs and being a part of just a family aspect has really pushed me to step out of my comfort zone and really like want to talk to people and want to be better. And being a part of Arise has let me do things that I would never think I would do. I would be on panels, conferences, like public speaking was definitely an issue with me, and being able to like sit here now and be able to talk to you guys to really express to you how impactful Arise and how everyone in the team and how my friends and how the community in general is just so welcoming and really pushes you to be better is something that is really cool to be a part of. And specifically when it comes to the community, like the youth org community and just the community in general, really wants to make sure like that everyone is welcomed and wants to make sure that the impact you're making is positive, and they want you to be able to go out in the world and really make an impact, and not just your life but other people's lives. And that's something that I really appreciate and something that I really always wish that I could do, and now being able to do it has really made me the person I am today, and has really made me someone that I truly like would want to be friends with, and someone I truly really am proud of. So that's something that's really important.
Absolutely, Deja, that was so much wisdom that you've shared at such a young age, knowing how important self-love is, and gaining support and affirmation and a place in a community that cares about you and enriches you. So thank you for hitting on those points, because we definitely, everyone on panel today, as well as with SEARAC, we want to create this community that allows for you and all of our youth to thrive. So thank you for sharing about your experience and doing all you do in the community. It's so amazing. I will go ahead and now introduce one of your colleagues at Arise. Nehemiah Jefferson is our next speaker from the organization, the same organization as Deja, and we wanted to hear more about what her experience has been like, and she's a college student. Who's also a leader in her community, as well as for Arise. So Nehemiah, if you can hear me, are you there?
Yeah, and it's Nehemiah.
Oh, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. Nehemiah, thank you for correcting me. Our names are so important. Nehemiah, please let us learn a little bit about what your upbringing and experience has been like being a youth leader in the community.
Yeah, so in regards to learning more about my identity and through Arise and everything like that, when I was younger, my parents definitely affirmed my Black identity. They let me know that I came from kings and queens, that that my skin is beautiful the way I am. They showed me movies about Black history and just really made it known the importance of my life as a Black woman. However, as I grew older and became more in tune with the world, I began to see a different narrative. I saw the 1 cent a day commercials portraying Africa, a place where my ancestors come from, as poor. In history, I never really learned about Black history other than the one paragraph slavery narratives that were in the textbooks and in the media. I was told like my skin and being dark isn't beautiful, and that I had to have European features in order to be seen as the standard of beauty. And it wasn't until I came to Arise that I had to decolonize that narrative that was fed to me by society and by the world. And by taking and being a part of programs like Honoring Our History, where I learned about power and privilege and oppression, learned about the 4 eyes of oppression, hegemony, learned about, why the school system is the way it is, why I'm not taught about my history, why I'm not taught about the importance of my life, and why Black lives truly matter, was then where I was able to really affirm my identity and learn more about self-agency and the importance of my voice, the importance of, my narrative and my story. We are told in stereotypes that as a Black woman, we're too aggressive, we're too harsh, we're too ghetto. And it's like, no, my voice is important. What I got to say matters. And my voice should be shared just as anybody else in any space I enter. So being a part of a safe space like Arise, where I can also learn about other cultures and identities and learn about the intersectionality between Southeast Asian cultures and the Black cultures and our shared experience, just really even more affirmed my identity and who I am as a Black woman. So.
Absolutely. I'm snapping to all of these uh, very, very complicated intersectional concepts that you have in education, as well as confidence in terms of asserting, what growing up was lacking and what you did in terms of decolonizing to embrace and to come to a pride of who you are and the work you want to do in life. I'm just so amazed with you and Deja. Thank you for sharing that. I do want to make sure we have some time for questions from the community, because all of the speakers today deserve, a community call all on your own. And so I really appreciate all that you all have shared, and would like if we could move into Q&A just to make sure we can get to some questions that we may have from the community. And I'll leave this slide up for everybody. Gina, would you be able to share with us any of the first questions coming in for speakers? And I do also want to make sure everyone knows we will be sharing the resources as well as the action items if we don't get to that for the rest of the call from the panelists, and how we can better support each of their organizations, all of their work, and those who have been facing arrests in Charlotte, as well as supporting the Black immigrant community under attack with immigration deportation right now. Gina?
Sure. So let's just take a minute, and I think folks will be busy typing right now. So as a reminder, if folks would like to share any questions, you can use the chat box, you can use Q&A, or you can press raise hand to share verbally. And with an eye towards time, let's make sure to just keep it as short as possible so all of our speakers can share their insights. So we'll just take a couple minutes here.
Thank you, Gina. I definitely see a couple questions. Did you want to ask the panelists?
Sure. I have one question here for Nehemiah. Nehemiah, could you basically just talk a little bit more about your process? You mentioned decolonization, and just speak to what that process was like for you in your education, or within or without school, and basically how you went about that.
Yeah. So in regards to decolonizing my own personal mind, before I went to my high school, I was surrounded by people who look like me. I grew up in Providence. However, when I went to high school, I went to predominantly white public school. I would say all white. I was the only Black student in almost all of my classes. So I was definitely not taught anything about my history. And it wasn't until I went to Arise that I took courses on, learning more about my history, on learning more about, where I come from, my ancestors. And I also learned more about the inequities that are currently taking place. I learned more about redlining, educational injustice, housing inequities, and how that affects my high school experience and the opportunities I received versus the opportunities that my friends received who went to public high schools in Providence, surrounded by people of color and students of color. So just seeing these inequities firsthand, and then also learning more about the history and how this all ties into how we operate today, how our society flows today, just showed me and exposed me to the truth behind, how the government is set up, how have access to opportunities, and how this has historically happened and continues to happen today. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much, Nehemiah.
All right. So as we are running a little over, I will throw out one last question to all the speakers. If you would like to share in terms of what does Black History Month mean to you in support from gaining support from the Asian community or other communities of color. What does that mean for you as we close out? And if you don't mind going first, Ty.
I think it's important to understand that whatever happens in a systemic system happens first to Black people. We are experimented on first. We are the ones that are harmed first. We're the ones that are targeted first. And so Black History Month is a time for us, yes, to uplift our stories. But when it comes to solidarity and working together and learning together, I think it's important for each one of us to think about the ways in which our actions are going to impact other folks, the ways in which our turnups are going to impact other folks, the ways in which the changes that we are asking for are going to impact other folks, and how do we reduce harm in all of those factors, especially for our Black community members, and how do we bring them in and ask, how do we give space to people that are so often forgotten, neglected, and rejected? Uplift our stories. That's what Black History Month means.
Absolutely, Ty. Thank you. Hattie, would you mind going next?
Sure. Before I answer, I just want to give a huge, I guess, like offering of gratitude to every single one of the panelists. I literally turned my camera off because I didn't want y'all to see me making the ugly faces, snapping, and all the yeses that I was doing. But I was just so uplifted and so inspired by listening to each and every one of you. And so I just want to say thank you. And it's an honor to share this space with y'all. In terms of what Black History Month means, I think this is it right here, right? Like these types of conversations and the type of work that we're doing, each and every one of us on this panel is Black history, and we're creating Black history in our own ways and hopefully paving the road for a better future. In terms of solidarity, I guess one thing I would say is that solidarity, particularly solidarity with the Black community and Black struggles, is not seasonal. You know, it can't be sort of a performative act of support. It can't be in name or mere words only. It requires so much action. It requires commitment. It's being able to have the same visceral reactions that we have when we see Black babies being deported, and being able to have that moral outrage, and being able to take that outrage and use whatever leverage you have in your community to try to make it better. It's being able to understand that anti-Blackness exists everywhere, even within our own organizations where we think we're doing good. And it's having, the self-awareness to be okay with being called out on that, and then doing the work that it requires to eliminate it, not only in our own organizations, in our own personal lives, and then we can, try to tackle it from the systemic um, aspect of it. So I guess I will leave it at that. In terms of specific next steps and asks, in terms of the deportations, if you go on UndocuBlack's website, our social media handles, there are petitions out there, there are sample tweets. Call your elected officials. You hear us say that sort of stuff all the time, but it genuinely works. We have been able to have people pulled off of deportation flights based on pressure that we've given to elected officials. Anything that you can do to uplift what is going on would be greatly appreciated. We, as a Black immigrant organization and community, feel like we're in the same space that we were at the height of family separation, when children were in cages. Children are still in cages, but at the height of it, when it was all over the media. The same place we were in when the Muslim ban first happened, when people were rushing to the airports to try to help people. It's the same kind of outrageous insanity going on, but it's targeted at Black immigrants and no one is talking about it. So I think one thing I would ask and challenge everyone to do is to uplift that messaging and share it with anyone that you possibly can. Thanks.
Thank you, Hattie. That's such an urgent message that we will get behind and share out after the call to participants, as well as our SEARAC social and with our community. And so look for that, everybody, and how we can support Undocu Black Network, as well as the Black immigrant community under attack right now. I will, last but not least, our youth speakers and leaders, if you can close us out with the question of what Black History Month means for you, and solidarity in supporting you.
For me, Black History Month means, to me at least, to just like embrace myself and embrace just everything that comes with being partially Black and everything that comes with being surrounded by like beautiful Black people. Like, Black people are really the blueprint for most of the stuff, or basically all of the stuff that's happening, especially in the United States, especially like just around, like, Black people and Black culture is always the main center point. And I feel like Black History Month for me is just embracing it all, really taking it in and really seeing like what an impact the Black community and the Black, just everything that has to do with being Black really has put on other people, and how it can really like be a positive impact, and how it's really such a beautiful community. And when it comes to the solidarity aspect, specifically from like an Asian point of view, or like any other POC, I feel like the way to really like show solidarity, to really show that you support, is just by like listening. If you really listen and you really take in everything that people are saying, and you're really trying to understand what the Black community is going through and what we're struggling, what we're trying to get out of, that can be a first step on how to help. Because just by listening, you're already taking a part of them that that people really have a hard time talking about. And you being able to listen and really care, and being able to really show that you want to support and that you want to be there, is something that is really important, especially being a multi-race kid and being just part of the Black community in general. So.
I would also like to uplift everything my fellow panelists has said, and would also say to just use your platform. Like, if you have space, if you have, opportunity, use that space to uplift, Black people and in solidarity to them, simply. Also, to just hold your peers accountable, and hold yourself accountable. Many times we hold our own biases based on white supremacy, based on what we've been fed, these fallacies that we're constantly fed since we were young. So to check those biases, to constantly educate ourselves, and to understand that we are all ever evolving individuals, that we can grow and that we can learn, and that, by educating ourselves and continuing to check ourselves, we can truly create a space where we can be in solidarity to Black lives and to not all lives, but everyone. So yeah, that's kind of all I have to say.
No, those are all such fantastic tips and life advice for everyone in general, and how to support one another, how to love one another, how to be there for one another, regardless of what background and struggles we're coming from, because we definitely are stronger together. And as the panelists have all shared in their own way, that not only is coming together important, but also listening, taking action, and doing what we can within our capacity to uplift one another. I think they all did a great job, and not only doing that for their organizations today, but really explaining in the short time we had what racial solidarity looks like, what celebrating one another looks like. And myself, as well as SEARAC team, are so honored to have been able to hear and learn from all of you, Nehemiah, Deja, Ty, and Hattie. So I'll go ahead and close off the program. And I typically we don't go over by much, but we just had to today to make sure we heard from all of you. And there's so many other questions that we received as well on Facebook Live, as well as our Zoom. So I want to acknowledge that we will make sure our panelists get your questions, and hopefully they will be in touch with you with responses. So with that, happy Black History Month, and look out for our follow-up action requests on how to support those who are with SEAC Village and Charlotte Uprising fighting their arrests, as well as how to show up for Black immigrant under attack right now. And of course, stay in touch, listen, love, uplift our youth leaders. So with that, have a great, wonderful Thursday, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your February.